hello, and welcome to Video Game Hangover. I'm Randy Dickinson, and I'm in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania.
Hey, I'm DJ Ross. I'm in Mountain View, California.
Each week on Video Game Hangover, we talk about the games that have been keeping us up at night. This week, it's all Naughty Dog all the time.
Oh.
Yeah. With The Last of Us Part 2, perhaps you've heard of it, and Uncharted 4, A Thief's End.
I've heard so much about The Last of Us Part 2.
So much. We're going to dig deeper into the bundle for racial justice and equality as well, with Hot Pot Panic and Sigh.
I go for a good hot pot right now.
I don't know. I don't think I know what a hot pot is. What's a hot pot?
They're not very vegan, so that doesn't surprise me.
Is it just a big thing full of meats?
Well, I mean, it's like a soup, but typically there's meat in it.
Meat soup.
I mean, you can get a veggie one. We can get into it later when we get into the hot pot panic. It's a whole segment on hot pots.
Well, just you force rank your best hot pots.
Yeah. I was saying I would like a hot pot, but that could not be farther from the truth. It is very warm here today. Hot pot sounds actually very unpleasant.
Yep. You get a cold pot.
I don't know if that sounds better. That doesn't sound
just a giant
either.
pot full of ice cream.
I don't. Oh, now you're talking.
I think we just invented a new thing.
Get you a little cold pot later.
Sounds great. Cold pot
now
panic,
I know what that is. I haven't had ice cream in so long.
No.
Yeah. I really, since this whole thing started, I've been trying to limit myself to, important groceries. Not important. Important's not the right word. But just the necessities. Not getting too indulgent with the stuff I buy, not buying the usual garbage that I like to consume.
I hear you.
So, ice cream doesn't exactly qualify, but maybe I should treat myself.
Yeah. Yeah. You're a survivor, DJ. You've lived this long. Have a little ice cream. Treat yourself.
I deserve it.
Yeah, absolutely. We took the reverse approach at the beginning of this whole thing.
Oh, yeah.
We hit the grocery store, and we had a sort of New Year's resolution that we were going to work out a little bit more. We're going to watch our food intake and try to eat a little better. We had a big vacation planned, and we were going to try to look good in bathing suits.
Mm-hmm.
So we were trying to eat well. And then, everything went sideways. And
this was back in January.
This was back at the beginning of the year, yeah. So March, when things started going off the rails, we had a couple of good months of eating healthy and drinking lots of water and all that other fun stuff. And then it all kind of, went nutty. And Sarah was at the grocery store with me, and she's like, let's get Oreos. And it was just downhill from there. Yeah.
How do you say no to that, though?
Those Oreo flavors. They had the tiramisu Oreos.
Oh, what? I've just blanked out on the last 3 months of novelty Oreo flavors.
Right. They had carrot cake. We were at the store the other day. I'm like, I don't know if I need a carrot cake Oreo.
I would not, I'll eat any kind of Oreo once.
Yeah.
Almost any kind.
That's the dilemma, is you can't get 2 or 3.
That is exactly,
Oreos.
Yes, I have faced that dilemma before.
You have to buy a giant family-size pack of Oreos.
This is why I like the self-checkout, because I can saddle up to it with 3 packs of novelty flavored Oreos, and no one is there to judge me.
Only yourself.
Right.
Yep.
I'm past that at this point. Just 3 things of Oreos, whatever, fine.
Sure. Yeah. Recommend the tiramisu. They're good. Quite good.
Sounds great. I want some.
Yeah. It's got 2 different creams inside.
Oh,
it's delicious.
Oreos vegan?
Oreos
the
are
specialty
vegan.
ones? I know the regular ones are.
Yeah. And I check every label when they do these weird flavors just to make sure. And I've never seen a not vegan Oreo. So yeah, there you go. For our listeners, maybe interested in transitioning to something a little more plant-based, Oreos.
The all Oreo
still on the
diet.
menu. Yep.
All right.
So let me just dispel the illusion that anybody's like, all vegan food is healthy. Absolutely not true.
No. Man, I remember a few years ago, you recommended some froofy vegan Oreos to me, and they were good. But why did I have to pay extra for those things when I could have just bought regular Oreos?
Oh, they might have been the what were they? The Trader Joe's ones. I don't know what they're called.
I don't think they're from there, but
no.
Knowing knowing now that any old Oreo is vegan approved, I
Yeah.
just go and buy the bottom shelf stuff.
We can get like the Paul Newman ones that are like fancy, made with organic sugars and flours and stuff like
No,
that.
I don't need organic Oreos.
Yeah,
I'm not.
well, exactly. Yeah.
Hmm.
If you want to delude yourself into thinking that this Oreo is somehow better for me because it's made with organic flour.
I don't even buy the organic vegetables.
Yeah.
So I will go over there and be like, why is this bell pepper $5?
Bananas are 26 cents. Why is this one $1? Yeah, exactly. So no, I usually don't either. My mom has strong opinions on this, and she's like, these are the types of vegetables you should always buy organic, and these are the ones that are silly to buy organic, and there's a whole shopping philosophy to it, and I really just buy the cheap ones.
Yeah, I guess if you really want to min-max your groceries or your diet, it's cool to know the organic vegetables to go for, but I'm not at that's where I usually clock out.
Yeah.
Anyway. Oreos.
Video games. We played some.
We did. How's I guess you want to talk about The Last of Us?
We'll talk about The Last of Us, sure.
All right. Are we gonna go all in on spoilers since I know every single thing that happens in this game at this point?
No, absolutely not. No spoilers.
Okay.
It's not my, and I've not played the whole thing. I'm maybe a handful of hours in.
I actually don't know everything that happened.
No.
I ended up not getting it. Surprise, surprise.
Mm-hmm.
But over the weekend, it's been a great deal of effort trying to keep up with all the spoiler threads, which naturally just exploded as more people got their hands on the actual game and started playing through it. So I've, before I knew what happened based on like the leaks, which apparently some of them came from actual advanced copies, it sounded like.
Right.
But it's been kind of like, I knew the big plot points, and since then, since the release, I've just been kind of like filling in all the little missing details surrounding them. So it's been an interesting experience. We'll
have to do an offline chat. I fortunately was able to dodge most of that crap. I did see some reviews and tweets and stuff like that from people on the internet who had things spoiled for them and did not have the opportunity to kind of roll into the game fresh, and that's shitty. But
it really sucks.
I was fortunate enough to miss all of that stuff. I certainly had theories based on the trailer and trailers and sort of gameplay chunks and stuff they had shown over the years of where the story was going and who was present and all of that. But no confirmation on release day, which was great. I went into it as blind as you can go into possibly the biggest multimedia release of 2020.
I actually, except for the fact that I explicitly went out and sought out spoilers.
Right.
If I hadn't done that, I don't think I would have run into any, which I guess is good. Because it seems like it's just been treacherous. Like, there's been a deal of backlash from people who read early leaks. Yeah. And that has kind of manifested in just whenever a Naughty Dog staffer posts something online on social media, or when somebody posts a review of the game, a lot of the comments will just be like open spoilers for people complaining about the game, which is, it's kind of like watch what you click on as we approach the release. Yeah.
Always. And I've been in an internet connected world for a long time now. and I know generally you can sort of roll into the last 48 hours before any big media release, knowing I better sort of stay off Twitter. I better stay off of, whatever, Reddit, any other of those places where people congregate to share theories and ideas. It's best to avoid that stuff for the as you cross the finish line. I think what's notable about The Last of Us Part 2 is that it leaked very early. It's probably about a month right before. I think they had not even had kind of a concrete release date at that point. There was this big sort of brain dump of information about The Last of Us Part 2 that was, I guess, sort of positioned as retaliation for Crunch and a number of other sort of perceived slights.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if that Crunch actually ended up being true.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, not 100%.
Yeah. Crunch is horrible, don't get me wrong. It is unfortunate that people have to work themselves to death to entertain me. And I wish it were not that way. That said, I did buy The Last of Us Part 2.
It's like, that said.
I didn't know how to dig my way out of that hole, unfortunately. Yeah. What I was going to say is that I did read a late review today of somebody who bought their own copy, who didn't get a pre-advanced copy. And I guess there were a lot of rules set out by Sony in advance of what advanced critics of the game, reviewers of the game, could talk about. And there were a number of things. And this is part of...
I think I saw this too.
Yeah. Kind of the standard... release for anybody who gets kind of early access to these things is that you're not allowed to refer to certain events in video games. You're not allowed to talk about certain chunks of the video games. If you do any footage, you're only allowed to take it from the certain number of hours and incidents and stuff like that, in the interest of sort of keeping, I guess, some of this stuff under wraps. Mm-hmm. The review that I read today, this person had bought their own copy after release, had powered through it over the weekend, and then felt sort of liberated to talk about everything they wanted to talk about in the game. And they did say, here there be spoilers. And like a dummy, I started rolling through their review.
Oh, no.
And man, wouldn't you know it? 72 hours after release, I get spoiled.
Oh, no.
Managed to get through the month before without a single thing. But I did I think I've ruined something for myself that is yet to happen in the game that I'm playing right now.
Oh, wait, what did you read? I'll just say it. I'll bleep it out afterward.
That it...
Yep. All right, that's the big one.
Okay. Well, thank you for beeping that out for our listeners. But and that I guess a lot of gamers have issue with where the story goes and some of the incidents and stuff like that. And I've seen enough at this point to, I guess, not take issue with it, but to sort of, I guess, respect the choices that have been made. And I'm curious to see how Naughty Dog extracts themselves from it in the final hours of this game. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
It's been interesting kind of reading about the stuff that happens in the context of just the leaks, because they're all just these disconnected plot points, and seeing the reaction to that and kind of the backlash around everything.
Right. And you've played the first game, so you have kind of the foundation of the expectations. You know sort of the history of this game at the very least.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. I kind of know the premise and all that. But then just after the release, just getting additional detail on how everything connects and how it is ordered in the story, because I hope this is not a huge spoiler. I don't think it is, so I'm just going to say the game takes place out of chronological order. Is that a thing that happens?
That is accurate, yep.
Okay. It seems like it's becoming a common narrative thing.
Yeah.
But it seems like they do a lot of really interesting stuff in terms of presenting stuff that looks like something happens one way, and then actually when you encounter it later on, or you get more insight into sort of what is happening from playing more of the game.
Right. Yeah, I think even more than sort of playing with time in the game, it frequently, at least in the first few hours that I've played, you spend time with characters that you don't have any context on. And that is interesting as well, is that, I go into this thinking, yes, more Ellie, more Joel, and certainly came out of the first Last of Us with conflicting feelings about, particularly Joel, but about those characters and about their story. And I'm even not going to spoil The Last of Us Part 1 here, but again, interested in seeing how Naughty Dog sort of handles the baggage coming out of Last of Us Part 1. Mm-hmm. You end up in the early hours of this game focusing on characters that are not Ellie or Joel. And that to me was like, well, what's going on? I have to have faith that this is going somewhere, that this will add up to something that is meaningful to me. Nothing happens in a vacuum, and none of these things are done haphazardly. I have faith that they will deliver. So I'm going with the flow.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right. I was kind of one of those people who, I really enjoyed The Last of Us Part 1. I really didn't feel like it needed a sequel. Like, I don't think it needed a sequel in any sense, but even if they made one, I kind of hope that it wouldn't be Joel and Ellie again.
Yeah.
Just because of, I thought the first one left them in a very, very interesting and kind of satisfying place that made sense.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that, absolutely.
So it was kind of disappointing when they said, the next one's going to be about these characters again, but I am intrigued, or I have been intrigued to see that there's that it's kind of an expanded cast this time. There are a lot more people that get involved.
Definitely. and Ellie and Joel are nomads, so they're not in the same place they were before. So it's not even kind of the excuse me, it's not even the secondary characters that you were focusing on that kind of played a part in Ellie and Joel's story in The Last of Us Part 1. So again, you truly are kind of given characters with no context, and are left to hope that those threads kind of connect back to the story of those two characters later in the game.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, I feel stupid saying the obvious things. Is that the voice acting is just top notch. It's like people working really hard. The motion capture, sort of the facial animations are absolutely gorgeous. Naughty Dog doesn't skimp on any of that stuff. It is a beautiful, well-crafted game, and just there are even sort of silly things that happen, like and there was a bit of this on the internet over the weekend. At some point you pick up an extension cord and you have to sort of like throw it over a fence to plug it into a generator to be able to power something up in the game. Yeah. And even just the physics of being able to like gather up the extension cord, swing it, throw it over the fence, and the way it sort of drapes over things, I was sort of like, I've never seen that in a video game before.
Yeah. I think I saw they posted a video on Twitter that was just like a solid minute of Ellie carrying a rope and like shifting it in her hands, and the rope moves very realistically, and she would like tie it around objects. She's like, well, they really put some hours into the rope physics this time around.
There was a number of comments on this phenomena in the game over the course of the weekend. This sort of first weekend of release, as people are digging into the game, with other video game developers saying this must have taken months. I think the quote was, somebody must have cried a lot of tears over making this this extension cord work this way in the game. And then developers from Naughty Dog, programmers from Naughty Dog chiming in saying, we appreciate that you appreciate our work. Nobody cried over this, but yes, it was a lot of work and it took a number of months. And I'm like, it took months to figure out how an extension cord works in a video game. That's crazy. I don't know if it should be that way or needs to be that way, but I appreciate the attention to detail.
I saw kind of a counterpoint to that, which is like essentially Naughty Dog has been making the same, like on some level, the same kind of linear action game for the last 15 years.
Oh yeah.
So obviously, they have got a lot of it figured out, and they have been able to take a lot of that and just keep refining it with each iteration. Just referring to like since Uncharted 1, essentially.
Oh yeah.
Through the rest of the Uncharted series and The Last of Us 1, it's kind of just taken this long to really refine that rope technology.
And I see that. Yeah, at some point, you crouch in tall grass to avoid being detected by enemies, and I'm like, oh, well, this is like Uncharted 3 and 4.
Right.
And the grass moves in a similar manner, and the characters kind of belly crawl in a similar way, and yeah, there are definite threads that connect back to previous Naughty Dog games, because like you said, yeah, they've been at this for a while and they've figured that stuff out.
I got a little of that even playing through Uncharted 4, just because this is the first time I played it this last week, but it's the first Naughty Dog game that I've played on PS4. Just kind of that level of technology and graphical fidelity. It's been impressive to see some of the stuff they've achieved. There's even a little bit of in Uncharted 4 you have this, what do they call it, like a winch on the front of the Jeep you drive around.
Yes. And
you have to loop it around a bunch of stuff to haul the Jeep across or up hills and uneven terrain and that sort of stuff.
Yep.
But even noticing that, I was like, aha, clearly they retained this rope physics engineer or whatever to work on The Last of Us Part 2.
It's the origin of the extension cord from The Last of Us Part 2 right there. Exactly.
I have no idea how it all actually ties together, but I just thought it was like, I see that the seeds were planted.
And I think even structurally, the way that Last of Us 2 is sort of presented is similar to the way that Naughty Dog handled kind of the structure of Uncharted 4, in that it's not necessarily an open world game, but it's a wide open area game that it funnels you along into the point it wants to kind of take the handcuffs off of you, and then gives you this big open world to kind of explore, but it's finite. It's not meant to be. It's not, a one-to-one depiction of New York City. It is meant to be kind of this area that is big and has a lot of secrets, and we're not going to hold your hand as you explore and make your way. In Uncharted 4, they play a lot with sort of verticality, obviously, and you being able to kind of get up on top of things. And The Last of Us, it's more about kind of getting into stuff and piecing together kind of what's left in the world to be able to scavenge the supplies that you need to be able to move forward and etc. So,
is Last of Us 2 that much more open than the first one?
Significantly, yeah.
Huh.
It's a little overwhelming at first. In fact, you are dropped into a geographic place that is the remains of some historical city, and it is, of course, many years after kind of the mushroom apocalypse has happened in The Last of Us, the cordyceps apocalypse, and everything is overgrown, nature's reclaimed, etc., etc. And you are trying to essentially make your way through a city you've never been to before, that is mostly sort of decimated by nature and humanity at this point.
Was it structured more like the open areas in Uncharted 4, you said? So it's not like if you were to say Last of Us is an open world, I would imagine maybe you have to go back and forth between specific areas over the course of the certain chapters, or is it still mostly like point A to point B?
No, it's a grid. You're trying to make your way around. Essentially, it's a couple of city blocks. You have a horse to get around. So in Uncharted 4, you have a Jeep to get around. Huh. And you have a map that Ellie conveniently and thankfully kind of fills in as she kind of figures out where she is and pieces things together. She'll find a note in a checkpoint that, there might be supplies hidden in this old coffee shop. And then she'll circle on the map, maybe supplies here, coffee, and then question mark. And it helps you as the player sort of figure out where the heck you are and where you're going. And fortunately, always on the map, there's a "you are here" that helps you kind of figure it out. But it is vast, and it does sort of, to a degree, reward you for exploring. And of course, those explorations are kind of the push-pull in the game where, yes, maybe you'll find a cool cache of supplies, maybe you'll find fuel that will help you progress later, etc., but the basement of that building might be filled with horrible monsters who want to eat your face.
Mm.
Yeah. And, unfortunately, in The Last of Us, fighting the zombies is still the least interesting part of the game.
Are the encounters changed at all? Is it still kind of Last of Us 1 style?
It's still Last of Us 1 style. I've encountered one sort of, again, it's much further into the timeline here, and I guess there are new types of, or a new evolution of monsters that have been taken over by the cordyceps virus. So I guess the longer you're infected with it, the more it does to your body, which makes sense, I guess. And sure. So I think that is a convenient way to kind of present some new types of monsters for you to fight. But all of these encounters still feel very much like Last of Us Part 1, where you go into a place, a building, a hallway, an old bookstore, an old record store, whatever, and crouch hidden behind things as monsters shriek and shamble around. And some of them can see you, and some of them have very acute hearing, so you have to be super quiet around them. And you just have to kind of leverage all of those pieces, craft distractions, craft little bombs, figure out which ones you can silently sort of sneak up behind and stab in the neck, and figure out which ones have to take a shotgun to the face, et cetera, et cetera. So, yeah, it feels like kind of the Last of Us playbook in a lot of ways. And again, I find that the more that I kind of encounter these things, the more I'm like, let's just get it over with. Oh my God, thank God there's only 4 of them in here. Let's just wrap it up. And I think
kind
to a
of
certain
like
degree,
that in The Last of Us 1, though. I mean, it wasn't really enjoyable, as you say, but I felt like that really added to just the experience of being in that situation, because there were a lot of times when you had to get from just one side of the room to the other one.
Yeah.
But then there are all these zombies in the center, and it's very unpleasant having to deal with all of them.
Right. Yeah. I don't know. Maybe I'm just a little salty from having survived all of that in The Last of Us, and getting into The Last of Us Part 2 and realizing that very little of it has changed.
Yeah.
that you'll like, oh, hey, here's the door into the long sealed up building that I'm trying to get into. And she'll like squeeze her way through, and on the other side, thing will jump out, and then you have to deal with it. And it just feels, I don't know, predictable. It feels rote for Last of Us at this point. And it's a little unfortunate that that there was not some evolution in kind of the thought process and how to make these encounters feel a little more fresh.
It's kind of how I feel about Uncharted 4. Not to just continue blending the discussion, but I feel like a lot of it, and this was kind of popping up in Uncharted 2 and 3, there's like a lot more stealth, or a lot more opportunity for stealth in Uncharted 4.
Very much. Which
is very, like, it's very conflicting to me, because on some level I just want to like run and gun through the whole thing. Because I don't think, I feel like in Uncharted 4 the stealth isn't especially great. I mean, it's like nice to be able to make that choice if that's how you want to play it, but then the enemies don't really behave ideally like they would in kind of a pure stealth game, I feel like.
It feels very, if I remember correctly, and it's been a while since I played Uncharted 4, but I remember the stealth feeling very forgiving, like the game wasn't necessarily built for it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that you could use it, but it always sort of seemed like the guards and stuff that you were up against would much rather be running around shooting you with machine guns.
Oh, yeah, and that's something I actually like about Uncharted, because, you know, it at its core, it is just a third-person cover shooter for those segments. And it's not like in a stealth game, if you fail the stealth component, you are just screwed, have to restart, and you just start playing Uncharted 1 at that point. But for some reason, I just can't, as much as I kind of dislike the way the enemies work in the stealth segments, I can't stop myself from just sneaking around and like marking everyone and trying to think like, oh, this is how I got through this corridor, so I'm not seen by this guard up here. And it just, you know, takes 10 times longer than I feel like an Uncharted game should.
Yeah.
But then in The Last of Us, it's really, like, it is much more like a stealth game in the sense that if you have to, there's not really like a go loud option. Like, if that happens, then something has gone terribly wrong and you probably will end up getting killed. Right,
yeah. If you screw up a stealth section, it is essentially a game over in The Last of Us. And that can be frustrating, too, that if you're, like you said, just trying to get across the room and there's, you know, 4 shrieking, shambling monsters between you and the exit. If you sort of red alert on the second one, then they're all going to come running and you have to start the whole campaign. Oh, not the whole campaign, but that whole room at the very least.
Start all the way back into the whole thing.
No, it's not what do they call those games now?
Playing in Iron Man mode or...
Right, crushing. No, it's not like that. But yeah, you do have to start the encounter all over again, and it does feel tedious. I lowered my difficulty. I was tired of futzing with these stupid monsters and really am here for, you know, occasionally kind of fun set piece kind of escapism. And yeah, I don't mind kind of building some cool tools and maybe shooting a zombie in the face every now and then. But I'm mostly here for the story. So I drop my difficulty and I find that I can kind of mop up some of these zombie closets a little more efficiently. And again, I find that the stealth is pretty forgiving in that.
Okay.
Yeah, I can occasionally sort of linger a little too long in the vision of one of the monsters without setting everybody off, and not having to sort of reset that encounter and start over from scratch. So yeah, The Last of Us Part 2 has a number, just tons of accessibility options for people who come to gaming with different sort of abilities and limitations. I guess for me, it's just a matter of being able to kind of hammer my way through the zombie rooms pretty efficiently so I can get on with the story.
How far down does the difficulty go?
There is a very easy.
Is that just like you can't be harmed at all, or
I'm not sure what concessions it makes. I think a lot of it is sort of detection is very low on behalf of the monsters. You get tons of resources, so every drawer you open, every shelf you find has a handful of ammo and crafting equipment for you to be able to sort of build bombs and lures and health kits and all that other stuff. So I think it just makes the game more digestible in a lot of ways. There's a step up from that, I guess. So there's very easy, normal, I guess they call it, and there's 2 levels of difficulty beyond that, even. And that's unimaginable to me. I'm not sure who that gamer is, but it's certainly not me. So I'm playing on the easy mode. I didn't go very easy.
Yeah, I feel like The Last of Us, even on normal, was kind of like on the difficult side, especially for Naughty Dog.
Yeah. Yes. Earlier this year, when The Last of Us had kind of an earlier release date, part 2 had an earlier release date, I decided I was going to play the first one again. Maybe you remember me talking about it briefly on the show. I'm like, well, if I'm going to replay it, I might as well play it on a harder difficulty.
No,
and that
really?
was a bad choice.
I couldn't remember what you did. I can't believe you did that.
Yeah. No, I mean, not for long. It certainly didn't last. But probably the 8th or 9th time I was trying to get my way through just the first encounter with a room full of zombies, and I was pissed.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that seems like the sort of thing where, like, oh, man, yeah, every weekend I replay through The Last of Us. I know this game like the back of my hand. It's time to bump it up to the next difficulty level.
Yeah.
Not like I spent 5 years away from this game. Let's take it up a notch.
All right, well, probably not a good choice on my behalf.
That's kind of just how I see difficulty.
You and I should have talked it out before I hit that button, but
I'm actually playing Uncharted 4 on easy. There is the difficulty level below that is like explorer mode or something, which just sounds like, you know, you're a tourist or something. Maybe the enemies don't even have guns. They're just like pointing you towards the treasure.
They just carry your bags for you. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that'd be amazing, actually. I didn't bump it down that far just because I felt like I wanted some resistance.
Yeah. I like a little conflict. Exactly.
A little bit, yeah. I like to feel like there's some consequences. But a few months ago, I read some forum thread where somebody was like, yeah, veteran Uncharted player. I just started playing Uncharted 4 recently, and I put it on easy, and I'm playing through it like an action movie. It's just like, that sounds great. Uncharted combat up to this point has been fine. I don't feel like it's, I don't know. I don't need to really challenge myself by bumping it up a couple levels. Let's try taking it down one. See how that is. And it's been fine. I feel like it was a good choice. I don't... There have definitely been some situations where I'm just like, yeah, can you imagine if I was just playing this on hard mode? This would be very unpleasant.
Some of those encampments in Uncharted 4, if I remember correctly, it's a lot of you driving your Jeep around from like site to site in this big open area. And some of the sites have like just a number of guards and a lot of verticality and monuments and buildings in the middle. And you're sort of at the edge of it, kind of crouched down in the grass, wondering how the hell am I going to get through this? Because there's dudes everywhere. And
I feel like it, like on easy especially, it is a completely viable option to just run in guns blazing. Whereas probably don't want to do that initially on even normal mode. And there have been a few cases where, I'll be in a firefight already and just a whole other wave of enemies will show up. And I'm just like, oh my God, can you imagine if the same stuff was happening, but just everybody had twice as much health or however it scales on normal mode.
Exactly. Yeah. And so, Uncharted has a long history of enemies that are essentially just bullet sponges that you just empty clip after clip after clip into, and they still kind of run around and take shots at you. Yeah. I can just imagine on crushing mode, on the most difficult mode of any Uncharted game, that would just be cranked up to infinity.
Yeah, that's just for people who want to suffer, I think. And with Uncharted especially, it just seems like those are clearly just designed to be an interactive action movie. So, I don't know. I feel like you want to keep the frustration level low for those.
Oh, I agree. Yeah. Anytime it makes you go back and do a thing over it feels like, you're kind of breaking that narrative.
Yeah. I felt like it actually worked well for The Last of Us just because, it's a, very tense world that everybody lives in that game. So the extra kind of, unpleasantness, even though it was not enjoyable, really added to the, just the atmosphere. Sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's a world of dire consequences for everything, right? Every choice, every sort of decision you made could have a horrible impact. I could see that. It still doesn't sort of temper my level of frustration with having to deal with those things over and over.
No, I mean, if I was going to start The Last of Us 2, I would definitely play it on at least easy, maybe very easy.
Yeah. I think it's one of the things, just like you had mentioned, it is sort of a world of kind of dire consequences that I think one of the biggest takeaways I've seen in all of the media that I've read and I've read over the last couple of weeks about The Last of Us Part 2 is that it is just sort of unendingly bleak, just sad and dire and desperate, and that has not quite been my experience with the first few hours of the game. There are bad things that happen. It's the apocalypse. But even beyond that, there are horrible things that happen that are tough to reconcile within the narrative of the game. But I still find that, again, to give Naughty Dog credit for the things that they do exceedingly well, that they do a really good job kind of filling kind of the lulls in between those beats with humanity and with levity. And typically that comes from character interaction and jawing along with the other person that you're riding around on the horse on, or wandering through town with, or et cetera, et cetera. So the little kind of interstitial conversations, little bits of just gabbing along with other kind of, I almost said villagers because I've got Animal Crossing on the brain, other characters. There's a long running kind of gag in the first Last of Us about Ellie really liking kind of dad jokes, and in fact finding a book full of them. Yeah. And that is revisited in The Last of Us Part 2 in a way that's very satisfying. I love moments like that. I think Naughty Dog is really good and astute at finding the places where shit, it's been real dark and real bleak for a long time. We need not a comedy relief, not like knee slapper kind of humor, but just being able to find a connection between people, finding some investment in their personalities. I find that rewarding. And I think Uncharted 4, in a lot of ways, Uncharted the series, is really good at filling those in-between moments with Nathan Drake being Nathan Drake.
Man, Uncharted 4 is still, I think it's a different writer, right? Because Amy Hennig left after
Amy
Uncharted
left,
4.
yeah.
So I think it's Neil, the
Correct.
same guy who worked on The Last of Us.
Yep. And he's the director of The Last of Us Part 2.
I forget. Did he actually write it? I'm not entirely sure. I think he did. I think he's at least one of the credited writers. But just the tonal shift from Uncharted 3 to Uncharted 4 has been so noticeable.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I mean, you just started up, and the last few games were Nathan Drake doing some sort of acrobatic or amazing feat. He was like swinging from a rope or dangling off a cliff. And Uncharted 4, the loading screen is just him at night just looking sad with a gun. It's like, man, what happened to this game?
Well, I don't know if I found that so noticeable. It's interesting that you focused on that.
I don't know. I just feel very different than I remember. I'm not like The Last of Us different. It's not quite as dramatic as that, but
that would be jarring, right?
That would be extremely jarring, and also weird if it was just an incredibly serious Nathan Drake game suddenly. But yeah, overall, it really does feel like I don't know. The last ones are like clearly he was just Indiana Jones, and in this there's I don't know. It just seems like they had Christopher Nolan directed or something. Where, he's still tossing in all these little quips every once in a while, but I don't know, it just seems so... Maybe it's just because everything is, it's so much more realistic looking now. Nathan Drake looks like a real guy, as opposed to just a very, very nice PlayStation 3 character. So it's weird just seeing this very realistic man jumping around and shooting guys, and occasionally wisecracking with all the other supporting cast. It feels surprisingly different than the last few Uncharted games to me.
It's been so long since I played Uncharted 4 that I don't remember that sort of seeming noticeable to me. But yeah, that's interesting that you caught that. Are you otherwise enjoying your time with it?
I think it's all right. I don't think it's going to end up being like my favorite Uncharted game or anything. I mean, on some level, I felt like Uncharted 3 would have been a fine place for the series to end. So the fact that they made another one feels a little unnecessary to me.
They made 2 more, DJ.
They made like 1.5 more.
Right. Yeah, Nathan's not in the half one, but
Yeah. Wait, so is that other one like a full game, or is it just an extra kind of?
no, it's full game.
episode?
It was originally what we're talking about. What was it called?
It's like the Lost Legacy or something.
The Lost Legacy. There you go. Was originally sort of positioned as a piece of DLC for Uncharted 4.
Yeah, that's what I thought it was.
Yeah, and but no, it eventually was released as its own standalone game. I think I remember it being 10 plus hours. It's a long game.
Oh,
yeah, and nary a Nathan Drake to be found.
I know, which is interesting. Huh? Okay, I don't think I totally understood that about it, but yeah, it just feels like kind of more Uncharted, but just I don't want to say unnecessary because it explores some new. There's a lot of new concepts that get introduced story-wise, and there's some interesting ways in which they develop that character.
Mm-hmm.
But it just, I don't know. I think it's just the fact that it seems so realistic now, but it's still kind of the same familiar Uncharted gameplay, where it's just like a real guy, but he's hanging off cliffs and doing the same kind of stuff. It feels very predictable, I guess, is something that I've noticed, is that he does all the signature Nathan Drake things, like he'll be running across a rickety bridge, and the bridge will like start to give way a little bit, and he'll go, oh, no, and then, oh, the bridge didn't actually give way. Oh, he made it. He's safe. And then that will happen like every 30 seconds. And it's just like, oh, okay, so they really just distilled the Uncharted experience down to, him just being kind of on the brink at all times, but in the end, he makes it safely to the next handhold.
Yeah, I can't dispute that.
It just feels like whereas Uncharted 2 and 3 attempted to push what was possible in not just Uncharted, but in just like in a AAA video game, Uncharted 4 feels very safe. You do have the open world segments, which are kind of new, but they're not quite as mind-blowing as anything from Uncharted 2 and 3, I don't think.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that jump between, and they were on the same console, but that jump between the first Uncharted and the second one was staggering in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And yes, I would agree with that. Yeah, as you pull into Uncharted 4, it feels like less of a leap into the future.
Mm-hmm.
Which is weird because it is a console leap. It was the jump between, it's the only Uncharted on... The only Nathan Drake numbered Uncharted on the PS4. Yeah, it should have been a bigger jump.
Yeah, maybe it's just, well, like I say, it's nice to see, Drake and the crew in, being rendered on the PS4 and all these amazing environments, because all the scenery is still just incredible.
Oh, yeah.
Naughty Dog did a really good job, but yeah, it's just not really hitting the same high notes as the previous ones to me. It feels more like, the next episode with Nathan Drake. Feels more like a Marvel movie or the next installment in the Uncharted cinematic universe. Whereas, I don't know, the last one, like Uncharted 1 through 3, just felt like these huge, like milestone events.
Yeah. Yeah. At some point, something will be written about the change in leadership at Naughty Dog and how that changed these things.
I'm pretty sure I've seen a bunch of those articles go by, and I'm just like, oh, wait till I've played it, and then I'm going to read this thing and figure out what the deal is.
It's out there already then, huh?
Yeah, I'm sure somebody's like done all the think pieces on this game. It's been an interesting experience, though. So the whole reason for me playing this is I knew I wasn't going to play The Last of Us, so I was just like, hey, how about that other Naughty Dog game that I haven't played? Maybe it'll be a nice substitute or a nice thing to compare The Last of Us to, since everybody's going to be talking about that. Yeah,
and they definitely structurally kind of weave into each other in pretty elegant ways. So, yeah. So yeah, I'm certainly going to stick with The Last of Us. I've heard it's a pretty long game, and there is still a lot for me to see and do. I'm really just sort of making my way through the map right now in that first big city area. So, more to come.
Nice.
Yeah.
I'm glad you're not hating it.
No. I see the things. I see the things that people take issue with, but it doesn't feel like a deal breaker to me yet. And admittedly, I've not spent 20 hours in the company of death in The Last of Us Part 2 yet, and maybe in that home stretch of the last hour 17, 18, 19 of this game, it will feel like enough is enough, and I've snapped my last neck and stabbed my last zombie, but so far I think like, every kind of Uncharted game I've ever played, it's kind of nice to have the gang back together and to wonder what they're kind of going to get up to this time.
After reading all these spoiler threads, and again, not spoiling anything, I've noticed that there are a lot of the backlash has come from certain groups which are just completely out of their minds and just reacting to ridiculous stuff. But then there's like a slightly more reasonable group that is just upset about stuff that happens. But even a lot of the reactions from that group that I've read, I felt are a little, I don't know if I totally buy it. I don't feel like it's a great thing to, like, they shouldn't have this much backlash about the game for the reasons that they have, I don't think.
We'll have to talk offline because I'm curious to what you're referring to.
I wish I could get into more detail.
We don't want to get into it here. Yeah, I know the game has been, and this wasn't part of my intent to discuss because I don't want to give it any more lip service than it deserves, but the game has been getting review bombed since release day on any website.
Those come from the first group of people.
Yeah. On any website where you can post user reviews, people have been posting salty reviews.
Actually, and a little bit from the second group, but still, I think a lot of the reaction from that group is because they got all of those leaks without the proper context.
Right.
I mean, I can still understand that they're very upset about stuff, but come on, guys, you're being a little ridiculous.
It is just a video game.
Yeah. I don't know, some people get very invested in these things, apparently.
Yeah.
I almost said something I was not supposed to say, so I'm going to stop talking about it.
Let's put a pin in it right there. Any other thoughts on Uncharted before we move on, or are you gonna stick with it?
Yeah, I think I will. I need to just convince myself to stop trying to stealth around stuff because it is taking me forever. And I kind of just want to run in and, I mean, I don't want to run in and gun people down with an AK. That sounds psychotic, but I feel like that's something Nathan Drake would do.
Yeah. I mean, he's a mass murderer after all.
Yeah. That is just another ridiculous thing. I mean, since Uncharted 3, there have been, or between Uncharted 3 and Uncharted 4, there have been all the discussions about like, man, why does he kill so many people? And I thought that was going to be a factor in the story in this. Like, I thought that was going to get addressed at some point. But then, no, at the end of the very first scene, or like the first or second big scene in the game, he's already killed. I checked my statistics, and it was over 100 people had been killed. So I was like, well, he's still just up to his old tricks. Yeah.
At some point, and I forget which game it is, at some point someone does say, and what about you, Nathan Drake? How many people have you killed? And then they move on to the next thing, and he kills more people.
It's such a throwaway line whenever that pops up. He's just like, oh man, you're right. Oh well, and then just continues murdering people.
Here I go killing again. Yeah, it's tough. I mean, I would love to live in a world where Naughty Dog has the money and the confidence to be able to make a Nathan Drake game that's just about exploration and just about exploration and hanging out with the guys, and not having to sort of have a massive body count as a repercussion of it. But we don't live in that world yet, so maybe someday.
Maybe, yeah. Well, we'll see. Okay, so I played a game about hot pots.
Oh, cool.
This is just getting back into the enormous bundle for racial justice and equality. Still got about, 1,594 games to get through.
Which is no longer available for purchase, is it?
No, it's not.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, although you can still buy all these things individually on itch, and I think a great deal of them are, they're very cheap, if that is a concern.
Yeah.
But one of the games I got into this week is called Hot Pot Panic. It is just a very brief indie game about going out to a hot pot place, which, if you're not familiar with hot pots, it's just I don't know where they come from. I don't even really know. Like I think the one that I used to go to was, I'm gonna mess this up. It was like either Chinese or Taiwanese. I'm gonna get in big trouble with some groups for that. But you just you go in, you have this table, and there's essentially like a big heated bowl or receptacle for the soup that they pour in, or it's just like a broth starting out, and then you order off the the menu, all the different stuff you want to toss in. It's like various vegetables and meats and things. Just picture an enormous soup cooking over a fire, and you're on the right track.
Right, gotcha.
And it ends up being kind of this fun social thing because it's like this big shared thing of soup, and they bring you just the trays of ingredients. And the places I've been to, you are kind of left to yourself to toss stuff in and retrieve it from the bowl when it's ready to eat. So it's like this communal thing. It's fun. You get to like socialize around it.
Yeah.
And that is kind of the premise for this game. You go to a hot pot place with your friend, and your friend, you are kind of left to be in charge of the hot pot, of tossing stuff in and eating it when it's finished. And meanwhile, the entire time your friend is trying to have a conversation with you. So you spend the game, you're seated across the table, or across the hot pot, I guess, from your friend, and you have the thing of ingredients, and you have to toss stuff into the hot pot and kind of keep an eye on it for it to like start sparkling, which means it's ready. But also you have to continuously look back up at your friend to see if she's like still telling her story, or if it's your turn to ask a question about the story to keep the conversation going. Because the ultimate goal is to make it through this lunch or dinner or whatever at the hot pot place with your friend before you run out of things to talk about, because then that is bad, and that is, I assume it's a game over. I didn't run into that, so.
Oh, good.
It's very interesting. It is. It gets progressively more challenging, I guess. It starts out real easy with you're like, oh, I should say something to get this conversation started. So you are presented with a few options, and they're just like, typical lunchtime conversation stuff. It's like, what's new with you? Or you heard any funny stories lately? Just like icebreaker stuff. And then your friend starts talking. Meanwhile, you're like throwing stuff into the hot pot, kind of looking up and down between the food and your friend, just to figure out when the end of or when you're like going to be prompted for a question, I guess. Mm-hmm. And then whenever she finishes talking, you are given another set of questions that you are supposed to pick from based on what your friend has been talking about. Oh,
so it's sort of testing you to make sure that you're paying attention.
Yeah, I mean, you have to pay attention. You can't just be like, oh, that's nice. I mean, you can do that, but then you probably get a big red X over your choice.
Right. And are you also trying to not burn your food?
Oh, yeah. You can totally burn the food, which is not good. Because, so I forgot there's like a hunger meter in the corner. So the goal of this thing is, you need to fill up the hunger meter by eating properly cooked food in the hot pot without exhausting all the conversation topics. So it's like it's an all-you-can-eat hot pot place, which I've never heard of. I'm sure they exist. Sounds expensive.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I found the best strategy was just continuously load up the hot pot with as much as possible, so I could pay more attention to whatever my friend was talking about. Because the questions start out very simple. It'll be like one sentence about whatever. I forget what she talks about. She talks about like tofu dogs at some point. But by the end of it, your friend will be like, oh, funny story, huh? Let me try and remember what happened. And then she'll just spit out like this paragraph of like this ridiculous thing that happened over the weekend. And you have a few seconds to scan over it and just be like, I'm paying attention to this and trying to get down all the details. Just so when you're prompted again, you can say the right thing that right. Your friend is like, oh, right. Well, thanks for caring or whatever.
Excellent. This sounds like a side quest in a Persona game.
It very much could be, I think.
It feels like you would go out with a character from your class to hot pot after school, and if you don't burn the food and don't offend them by being an airhead, you can enhance your social link and then, I don't know, kill more weird demons with them.
There was that guy in Persona 3. Wasn't he like the hot pot king, or he was some sort of culinary legend that I forget what the deal was. It's been a while since I played that, but that was...
I don't know. This sounds familiar.
As soon as I caught wind of that guy, I was like, oh man, I gotta build up my social link with this guy.
Maybe there's some free hot pot in it for you.
Yeah. You didn't actually have to do any hot pot stuff in that game, but it would have
No,
been nice.
I think if I remember correctly, it was just like an off-screen kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. I imagine if they bring that character back for Persona 6 or whatever, there will be more hot pot mechanics, which I think would have been interesting to have. It would have been a nice twist on this game, because really all you do is you just toss stuff in and wait for it to start glowing, and then you're like, oh, it's ready. So you take it out. But there didn't seem to be any difference between, there was a bunch of stuff you could throw in there. Like there was some kind of meat and like mushrooms and tofu, but they all seemed to cook at about the same rate. There wasn't a lot of nuance to it, although maybe that was fine, because maybe that would have been too much to handle. But I enjoyed it. It was quite a unique gaming experience.
Yeah, it sounds like not a thing you run into frequently in a video game.
No, I like the weird kind of offbeat stuff.
Yeah, it's just good for that. That's been my experience with nearly every sort of weird avenue I've gone down on itch.io. There's always sort of like, what, somebody made a game out of this?
Yeah. I mean, I would be, if you asked me to make a game about hot pot, I'd probably make something like, I don't know, like Overcooked or Cooking Mama or something.
Cooking Mama, right?
Yeah, where it is just, oh, that sounds great.
Right.
Actually, I don't know what that is, but it'd just be around the cooking. But the fact that they added in this conversation element, I think, is terrific.
Yeah, that's smart.
And it's also hysterical that all the answers that you end up being presented with are just kind of the typical bare minimum answers that you might be able to come up with if you're trying to do something else while your friend is talking. So she will spit out this whole long story, and it'll just be like, oh yeah, tofu dogs, huh? But she'll be fine with that as long as it tracks back to whatever the topic was.
If she wasn't talking about tofu dogs, you have a problem.
Yeah.
Yep. Cool. Yeah, I can't say I've ever done hot pot, but we have a fondue restaurant in Harrisburg.
Okay.
Called the Melting Pot, which I think is a chain. There are probably more of them.
I think there used to be one of those around here.
Yeah, and it's sort of staggered. There's like a cheese course, which is your appetizer, and it's the same thing. You have a little hot pot in the middle with melty, bubbly cheese in it, and you dunk things in it and cover them in cheese. But the second is a broth. You pick a type of kind of bouillon, and they bring you plates of whatever you want, veggies and things like that, and if you're so inclined, meats and seafood and stuff like that. And you put it on a little skewer and you drop it in the hot pot and cook it up, and then burn your mouth on the thing.
Yeah, that is sounds about right.
Yep. So we've done that a few times, and like you said, it's very social. It's we've always done it for like birthdays and big night outs and kind of things like that. So get a bunch of folks together around the big table and cook up a big bowl of weird soup.
I'm sure you could get a vegetarian or a vegan option. Although since it is a communal thing, you have to, everybody has to be on board with it.
Yeah. When we've gone, we try to get the long table that has 2 burners. And one of them is for our meaty friends. And fortunately, I have enough veggie and vegan friends that we can claim our own little hot pot on the other end of the table. And I don't have to cook my artichoke hearts in the same broth as your weird meats.
Yeah. Man, double hot pot. I have not gone with that large of a group. That sounds extravagant.
Yeah. Just one of those things I miss from the world before.
Yeah, remember that? I was actually thinking while playing this, like, I don't know if I'll ever go to one of those places again.
Right, exactly. That ship has sailed.
Yeah. This is the only way left to experience it, through this game.
There you go. It's an important historical document then.
Yeah, it really is. Anyway, Hot Pot Panic. Highly recommend if you're into the weird oddities. And then the other game I played from this bundle is called Psy, I think. Mm-hmm. I don't really understand the title. There's like a lot of Gaelic in the game. Again, just 90% sure it's actually Gaelic. I'm pretty sure that on the page there are some developers talking about that is the actual language in the game. So I was trying to search around to figure out the significance of the title, just in case I ended up talking about it, but could not dig anything up. But what the game is, this is another fairly quick experience, but it's entirely different from Hot Pot Panic. It is essentially a third-person shooter where you are playing as some kind of forest druid, which I hear that word thrown around a lot, but I never really fully understood what the essence of being a druid is. other than being just somebody who is in touch with nature on some significant level. But in this game, there's been some sort of disaster where some kind of very sinister looking machines or like robots have invaded this forest in which this druid lives. So this druid is resurrected or something by this forest spirit in order to deal with these things and kind of repel the machines and save the forest. And it's a very minimal third-person action game where you just have a bow and arrow essentially and a few moves you can do in order to fight these robots. But just the combination of all the actions that you have, just even though it's a very limited skill set, feels very good to me. It's like actually a super fun game. You don't have a jump, which is kind of took me by surprise because it just feels like I was playing with a mouse and keyboard, and it just feels like the type of game where you hit spacebar and your character just hops up in the air. But no, in this case you have like a sprint, and you can also dash, which is what happens instead of jumping. But it feels like once you get the hang of it, you end up kind of sprinting around all these robots, doing this little dash move to get out of the way when they attack you. And then you have to kind of charge up your bow to release like a more powerful shot, which felt very Monster Hunter to me.
Oh.
Because you can I guess you can kind of rapid fire it or pull back the string a little bit. But you notice as you're pulling back the string, there's a little circle that kind of narrows down around the arrow, and if you release it at the exact moment, or at a very specific moment, you will get a more powerful shot, and then you can kind of combo off of that as well. So it's just that. It's kind of an interesting mechanic combined with the very fluid movement and this kind of dash move made it was surprisingly engaging from a game where you have not a lot of actions at your disposal.
Cool. I'm looking at screenshots of it on itch, and it's beautiful.
Yeah, that's another thing that took me by surprise is that I've been playing a bunch of these games in the bundle. A lot of them have been very low fidelity, very like huge pixels, kind of retro graphics. But this one is like, it's in full 3D. The art looks terrific. You're in this gorgeous kind of misty forest at sunrise. The scenery is really terrific. The atmosphere is really good. And then there are just these sinister robot things falling down from the sky. So that's almost a little spooky when that happens. But I don't know. The druid feels so capable of dealing with these things. It's not really like a horror game or anything. It's actually quite fast paced once you get the hang of it.
It says that it is a third-person action game exploring Celtic folklore and deforestation. What's that about?
There's a little bit of it feels like there's a little bit of an environmentalist angle. It's not totally clear. I mean, you get a little bit of the backstory as you're playing through it. There are like clues in the environment that kind of indicate what might be going on. It's very brief and there's so little kind of story to it. I don't want to give away too much. But it was cool. It was a nice departure from all the chunky pixels and weird hot pot mechanics that I've been playing for the last few weeks.
Oh, I just found your review. I'm rolling through the comments on the itch website for it, and there's one from you.
Because
nice.
Well, I was having a really good time with it, and also it crashed on me, so I was just like, "Hey, what's going on with this?" But I went back to it and ended up playing through the entire thing again.
Cool. It's about an hour, right? So it's just under an hour.
Yeah. That like cool. An hour, I feel like is you really take your time and kind of explore everywhere. Maybe just because I played it twice, and the second time I was just like, all right, I already got the hang of this. I'm ready to go. Let me at him.
Speed running, Sigh.
I thought it was super good. I could see,
cool.
I like games nowadays that are, on the shorter side, that you can just get through all of them and like digest all of it in even in a single setting, which this definitely qualifies. But if you're going to make this a longer game, I think it would be super fun to just expand the kind of like movement and shooting mechanics. I could see it turning into like a cool, I don't know if it'd be like quite Monster Hunter style, but just its own type of action game. It's very unusual to me to play a game that is just like you shooting a bow. Like in third person and first person shooters, I typically don't do that. I don't even really do that in Monster Hunter. But I thought like everything, all the mechanics in this game just feel so they're like very satisfying.
That's awesome. Cool.
So again, that is Sai, SAI, also in that bundle, or just available on itch for a few bucks. Definitely recommend checking that out as well.
Cool. Well, good. I mean, listen, you have found a few gems. It sounds like between the ones you talked about last week and this week, you have unearthed some really interesting games.
Yeah, I'm making my way through the list. I actually played 2 more games from it, but I'm trying to pace myself in terms of how many to discuss on here. So I'll keep checking back in. Cool. Again, I have a collection on itch where I just keep track of all the stuff that I've played and would recommend. So a link to that will be in the show post at VGHangover.com. So go check it out if you're if maybe you also have this bundle and are struggling to figure out what's worth playing, or maybe you're just curious about weird indie stuff that's available.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, let's wrap this thing up because you have
I got
1,596 more games to play.
More.
Yeah. So. So if you need any more video game hangover in your brain, you should definitely follow us on Twitter at twitter.com/VGHangover. Or as DJ mentioned, you can always get show notes, links, and tell us what you thought about the show on VGHangover.com.
Yeah, we got a few recommendations on other cool stuff on the bundle that I rest assured have put on the list. I'll get to them at some point. But I guess where I was going with that is if you have recommendations, feel free to send us those, or you could tell us about them on our Discord.
Yeah. And where can they find the link to our Discord? Because it can be hard to find anything on Discord sometimes.
That is on, again, VGHangover.com.
Excellent. We would encourage you to always subscribe, rate, and review us on iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, anywhere else you listen to podcasts. Tell your friends about us. If you know somebody who's looking for a good show for a summer road trip, and they are, video game inclined, definitely point them in our direction. That stuff always helps us.
Are people doing road trips? Is that a thing this year?
I imagine people probably got to get out of the house.
They just don't get out of the car.
I read that drive-in movie theaters are making a comeback.
Oh yeah, I heard that.
There's not a lot of them left in the U.S., but they are seeing record business this summer because people need to go places and do things.
And I keep thinking, I've never once considered owning an RV, but it might come in handy this year.
Yeah. Probably less scary than sleeping in a dubiously cleaned hotel room.
Oh, yeah. No, just does not sound like a good idea.
All right. Well, we are going to go play more video games. We'll be back next week. Until then, this is Randy Dickinson.
This is DJ Ross.
Thanks for listening to Video Game Hangover. Goodbye.
Good night.
See ya. Do 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 do.